A world champion, dripping in sponsorships, publicly cornered a 30-year-old janitor. The demand, a humiliating fight in front of everyone. The champion was about to learn a lesson she'd never forget. The air in the Apex Performance Lab tasted like money. It was a sterile, metallic tang mixed with the scent of ozone from the high-end treadmills and the faint, expensive smell of new leather from the punching bags. Everything gleamed under recessed LED lighting, chrome weight racks, polished concrete floors, and floor-to-ceiling smart screens displaying biometrics and workout data. It was less a gym and more a temple dedicated to the science of human perfection, a place where monthly memberships cost more than a mortgage payment. Into this temple walked Maya Evans. At 30 years old, she was invisible, and she preferred it that way. Dressed in worn-out gray sweatpants and a faded hoodie from a local charity run, she clutched a simple manila envelope to her chest. She was the night janitor. She knew this space intimately, but only in the quiet, sterile hours after midnight, when the gods of fitness had gone home. Today, she had come during the day, her heart a nervous drum against her ribs, to submit an application. It was for a community outreach program, a long-shot proposal to get some of the neighborhood kids free access to the gym's older equipment. Her presence immediately broke the gym's rhythm. The rhythmic thump-thump of gloves hitting pads faltered. Heads turned. And then, a voice like splintered glass cut through the air. "Lost, honey. The service entrance is in the back." Jessica, the Viper, Vance stood coiled in the center of the main training floor. At 28, she was the reigning MMA bantamweight champion, a goddess sculpted from muscle and malice. Her platinum blonde hair was pulled into a severe ponytail, and her body was a canvas for her sponsors, Rage Fuel, Apex Wear, Titan Tech. She dripped success. But her fame was built as much on her vicious ground and pound as it was on her toxic social media presence, where she mercilessly tore down rivals and anyone else she deemed beneath her. Maya flinched but kept her composure. "I'm sorry to interrupt. I have an appointment with Mr. Miller. I'm just dropping this off." Jessica let out a sharp, mocking laugh that drew every eye in the room. She glided towards Maya, her movements predatory. "Mr. Miller? What, is he hiring more cleaning staff? You people are really branching out." The words, sharp and coated in prejudice, hung in the air. Maya's face remained a calm mask, but her knuckles whitened around the envelope. Before she could respond, Jessica did something that turned a private humiliation into a public spectacle. She whipped out her phone. Her thumb swiped across the screen, the familiar chime of an Instagram live broadcast cutting through the gym's hum. "What's up, Viper Pit? You are not going to believe this." She flipped the camera to frame Maya, who was now trapped in the digital spotlight. "We got a real-life Cinderella story here. The janitor thinks she belongs on the training floor. What do you all think? Should we let her play?" The viewer count on the screen exploded. 5K, 10K, 20K, comments flooded in. "Teach her a lesson, champ. Some people need to learn their place. The program exists," a deep voice boomed from across the room. Frank Miller emerged from his office. He was a man in his 50s, with a face like a roadmap of old battles and the quiet, immovable presence of an ex-Marine recon. He moved with a purpose that made even a champion like Jessica pause. "And Maya Evans has an appointment. With me." Jessica rolled her eyes dramatically for her audience. "Frank, seriously? Are we a charity now? My sponsors pay for an elite facility, not a social experiment." "Your sponsors pay for you to win fights," Frank replied, his tone leaving no room for argument. "Who trains in my gym is my business." But Jessica wasn't done. The live stream was a roaring success, and she was feeding the flames. A wicked smile spread across her face. "You know what? Frank's right. This is a place for athletes. So let's see if she's an athlete." She turned her full attention to Maya, her phone held high. "How about a friendly spar? You and me. Right here, right now. 1 3-minute round. If you can last, you can stay. Hell, I'll even fund your little project myself. If not. She made a dismissive gesture. You go back to your mops and buckets, and you never show your face in here during business hours again. The gym fell into a dead, anticipatory silence. It was a trap. A public execution designed to break Maya's spirit and create viral content. Frank started to intervene, to shut it down, but Maya looked past Jessica, her gaze steady, and met Frank's eyes with a look that was not fear, but something else entirely. Something he couldn't quite place. Then, looking directly into the lens of Jessica's phone, broadcasting her to tens of thousands of strangers, Maya Evans gave a small, firm nod. I accept. The gym buzzed with a cruel, electric energy. Jessica's live stream was now a global event, with over 50,000 people watching. She was in her element, preening for the camera as she had her hands wrapped by her sycophantic coach. Alright, Viper Pit, the charity match is on, she narrated, her voice dripping with condescension. We're about to teach a very important lesson in humility. See this? She pointed her phone at Maya's worn-out sneakers, left near the edge of the mat. I bet those have seen more dirty floors than a boxing ring. This won't take long. The comments were a toxic waterfall of praise and derision. Destroy her, Jessica. Queen Viper putting the trash in its place. This is why you're the champ. Meanwhile, in the relative quiet of a small locker room, Frank Miller handed Maya a pair of 16-ounce sparring gloves. They were old but well-maintained. Maya, you don't have to do this, he said, his voice low and serious. Her ego isn't worth a concussion. We can just tell her to go to hell. And let her win. Maya replied calmly, her voice even. She flexed her fingers in the borrowed gloves. They felt familiar. Too familiar. She does this because she thinks she can. Because she looks at me and sees someone worthless. Someone she can step on for a few extra likes. Frank watched her, his practiced eye-catching details others missed. Her hands weren't shaking. Her breathing was slow and deep, controlled. And then he saw it. He knelt down, pretending to adjust her shoe, and looked closely at the sole of her old sneaker. The wear pattern wasn't random. It was concentrated on the ball of the foot, with distinct scuff marks on the inner edge. These are boxer's pivots, he murmured, almost to himself. He looked up at her, his gaze sharp with a new kind of curiosity. You've been in a ring before. Maya didn't answer directly. She met his eyes, and for the first time, he saw a flicker of the fire she kept banked deep inside. Mr. Miller, she said, her voice dropping to a near whisper, some people are born in the spotlight. They're given everything, the money, the fame, the respect. They never have to fight for it. Then there are people like me. She paused, the weight of 1,000 silent battles in her eyes. We aren't given anything. We fight for every inch. Every bit of ground we stand on. I'm not here to hurt her. I'm just here to take back the respect she tried to steal from me in front of the world. The word respect hung in the air. Frank had coached hundreds of fighters, from raw recruits to seasoned pros. He'd heard all the talk of hunger, of desire, of heart. But this was different. This wasn't the bravado of a challenger. It was the quiet, unshakable certainty of a survivor. He felt a chill snake down his spine. He was looking at a fighter, but she was a kind he hadn't seen in a very, very long time. He stood up and gave her a firm nod. All right, Evans. Let's go take back your ground. As they walked out, Jessica was finishing her pre-fight ritual, shadowboxing for her phone, every move exaggerated for effect. Time to take out the trash, she crowed to her followers, a final, arrogant flourish before the bell. Just as Frank was giving Maya some last-minute advice, keep your hands up, move your head, just survive the 3 minutes, the main door of the gym burst open, letting in a slice of harsh sunlight. A man stood silhouetted in the doorway. He wasn't large, but he filled the space, carrying an aura of dense, coiled energy. He wore a grease-stained mechanic's shirt and his hands looked like they were carved from old, hard leather. His eyes, sharp and intelligent, swept the scene, taking in Jessica's theatrical performance, the crowd of onlookers, and finally, settling on Maya. Maya, the man's voice was a low rumble, laced with a thick Detroit accent. "What in God's name are you doing?" Maya froze, her composure finally cracking. A look of pure shock, almost panic, flashed across her face. "Ray. What? How did you get here?" The man, her older brother Ray, strode forward, ignoring everyone else. "TJ from the auto shop down in Compton saw the live stream and called me. I broke every damn speed limit getting here from the valley. I thought we were done with this." He stopped in front of her, his voice softening with concern. "I thought you'd left all that behind." Frank stepped in, intrigued. "You two know each other?" Ray's eyes, which had been filled with worry, hardened as they landed on Jessica, who was now smirking at the family drama unfolding. "Know her?" Ray said, a bitter laugh escaping his lips. "I was her first coach. Her only coach." He turned back to Maya, his voice dropping so only she and Frank could hear, but the intensity of it was undeniable. "Maya, remember why they called you the Ghost?" The name hung in the air. At the edge of the crowd, a couple of old-school trainers, grizzled men who had been in the fight game for decades, suddenly looked up. Their eyes widened. One nudged the other. "The Ghost?" he whispered. "The Detroit Ghost? I thought that was just a story, a myth." Jessica, overhearing the whispers, scoffed into her phone. "Oh, this is rich. She's got a nickname. And look, she brought her big brother to watch the beatdown. This is getting more pathetic by the second." Ray's head snapped towards her, his gaze turning icy. He took a step towards Frank, never taking his eyes off the champion. "Let me tell you something, Coach," he said, his voice low and dangerous. "You see her?" He gestured to Jessica. "She fights for cameras, for money, for fame. She learned to fight in a place like this, with clean mats and sports science." He then pointed a calloused finger at his sister. "My sister learned to fight in the abandoned Packard plant in Detroit. She fought in bare-knuckle circuits on concrete floors, not for trophies, but to pay for our mother's chemotherapy. At 17, they called her the Ghost, because men twice her size couldn't land a clean hit on her. She'd slip their punches and be gone, leaving nothing but pain behind. It wasn't a nickname. It was a warning." A heavy silence fell over their corner of the gym. Frank stared at Maya, truly seeing her for the first time. The quiet dignity, the economic movements, the unnerving calm, it all clicked into place. This wasn't a janitor. This was a predator who had learned to walk among sheep. Why did she stop? Frank asked, his voice barely a whisper. "Our mother made her promise before she passed," Ray said, his voice thick with emotion. "She made her promise to build a life, not just survive one. She came to California to start over. To be invisible." He looked at Jessica, who was now impatiently tapping her foot, and his expression filled with a cold fury. "But people like her, they can't just leave a quiet soul alone. They have to poke it. They have to humiliate it." Ray met Frank's eyes, a grim certainty settling between them. "Jessica Vance is about to learn the difference between fighting for a prize and fighting for your life. You tell me who hits harder." The bell shrieked, a jarring sound that officially began the execution. Or so everyone thought. Jessica exploded from her corner like a compressed spring, a blur of platinum blonde hair and branded athletic wear. She was a world champion, and she moved like one, fast, aggressive, and utterly confident. She threw a lightning-fast three-punch combination, a jab-cross jab meant to snap Maya's head back and establish immediate dominance for her global audience. But the punches connected with nothing but air. Maya wasn't there. In the instant Jessica launched her attack, Maya had taken a small, almost imperceptible step to her left. Her feet seemed to glide, not run, across the canvas. She moved with an eerie, liquid grace, like a column of smoke drifting away from a prodding finger. "What the?" Jessica muttered, her brow furrowing in confusion. She reset and lunged again, this time with a powerful leg kick aimed at Maya's thigh. The kick swung through empty space as Maya flowed backward, just out of range, her expression unchanged. "Stand still, damn it!" Jessica snarled, her frustration beginning to bubble to the surface. The Viper was used to opponents who were terrified, who shelled up, who presented a static target. She wasn't used to a target that simply vanished. The next 30 seconds were a masterclass in frustration. Jessica threw everything in her arsenal, hooks, uppercuts, spinning back fists. Each strike was a testament to her power and skill, and each one met empty air. Maya was a phantom. She didn't block or parry in the traditional sense, she simply wasn't where the punches were aimed. Her movements were a dance of pure economy, her body anticipating Jessica's intentions before the champion's muscles had even fully contracted. The mood in the gym began to shift. The snickering and contemptuous whispers died down, replaced by a confused murmur. On Jessica's phone, which her coach had propped up on the corner post, the comments began to change. "What is happening? Did she just glitch? Why can't the champ land a punch?" Jessica's breathing grew ragged, her carefully constructed composure starting to crack. This wasn't a fight, it was a humiliation, but not the one she had planned. She was punching at a ghost, and the whole world was watching. Then, it happened. Fueled by rage, Jessica overcommit, throwing a wild, haymaker right hand. As her body twisted, she left herself open for a fraction of a second. It was all Maya needed. Pivoting on the ball of her right foot, the same foot that had worn a groove into her old sneaker, Maya swayed inside the punch. As Jessica's arm flew past her head, Maya drove a short, crisp, perfectly timed right cross straight into the side of Jessica's jaw. The sound wasn't a loud crack, but a sickening, dense thwack that echoed in the now silent gym. Jessica staggered back, her eyes wide with shock and pain. A dark crimson bloom was already starting to form on her cheekbone. She touched her face, her fingers coming away with a smear of blood. She, the Viper, the undefeated champion, had been hit. Not just hit, but hit cleanly, effortlessly, by the janitor she was supposed to be destroying. From his spot outside the ring, Ray Evans allowed a small, grim smile. The ghost had just made her presence known. The bell for the second round felt like a death knell for Jessica's arrogance. The confident swagger was gone, replaced by a cautious, almost fearful posture. The hunter had become the hunted. The Viper's venom had been neutralized, and all that was left was a confused and bleeding fighter, her face a mask of disbelief and swelling purple. Her corner man's frantic instructions were a useless buzz in her ears. The crowd was no longer hers. They were a sea of silent, stunned faces, their phones held aloft, recording not a champion's dominance, but her inexplicable collapse. The comments on her live stream were a tidal wave of mockery and shock. OMG, the Viper is getting pieced up by a janitor. The ghost is real. This is the greatest thing I have ever seen. Maya met her in the center of the ring, her calm demeanor a terrifying contrast to Jessica's rising panic. For the first time, Maya spoke, her voice low but carrying clearly in the tense silence. "You wanted to teach me a lesson," she said, her eyes locked on Jessica's. "The lesson is this: never mistake quiet for weakness." That was the signal. Jessica, goaded by the words, launched a desperate, flailing attack. It was clumsy, powered by fear and fury, not technique. This time, Maya didn't just evade. She attacked. It was the signature move her brother had spoken of, the one that had earned her the name, the Ghost, in the cold, dark factories of Detroit. She feinted left, drawing Jessica's guard. Then, in a move that seemed to defy physics, she dropped her level and pivoted, disappearing from Jessica's direct line of sight. For a heartbeat, she was simply gone. Then she reappeared on Jessica's blind side. The combination that followed was a blur of controlled violence, so fast the phone cameras could barely track it. A sharp jab to the solar plexus that made Jessica gasp and double over. A brutal right cross to the temple that snapped her head sideways. A devastating left hook to the liver that stole the air from her lungs. And finally, as Jessica's guard dropped completely, a perfectly placed uppercut that connected flush on her chin. Jessica's eyes rolled back in her head. She didn't fall gracefully. She collapsed like a demolished building, her body folding in on itself, hitting the canvas with a heavy, final thud. The gym erupted. An animal roar of shock and exhilaration tore through the silence. People were screaming, cheering, climbing on benches for a better view. Frank Miller slid into the ring and began to count, but it was a formality. Jessica Vance was unconscious. 8, 9, 10. It's over. Maya calmly walked to a neutral corner, her breathing barely elevated. The fight was done. The point was made. Jessica's manager, a slick man in a tailored suit, rushed to the ring post to grab her phone, his face pale. The live stream was still active, broadcasting the image of his unconscious champion to the world. But it was the sponsor's call coming through on his own phone that sealed their fate. He answered it, and in the chaos, his horrified words were audible to those nearby. "What do you mean, terminated? Effective immediately? But the fight just..." "No, I understand. The morality clause. Yes. I understand." He looked up from his phone, his face ashen, just as Jessica began to stir. He was no longer looking at a cash cow. He was looking at a liability. Maya approached the fallen champion as the medics attended to her. She knelt down, her voice soft, meant only for Jessica. "You wanted to humiliate me to make yourself feel bigger. But true strength isn't about putting someone else down. It's about having the dignity to stand tall, even when the world wants you to feel small." Jessica looked up, tears of pain and utter humiliation streaming down her swollen face. And for the first time, in her eyes, there was something that looked like respect. 3 months later, the world had been irrevocably altered for both women. Jessica, the Viper, Vance was in freefall. The video of her knockout, nicknamed The Ghosting, had surpassed 100 million views. She was a global meme, a cautionary tale about arrogance. Her sponsors had all fled, invoking morality clauses. Rage Fuel had not only terminated her contract but had erected massive billboards in Times Square featuring their new star athlete. The billboards showed a powerful, serene image of Maya Evans, fist raised, under a single, bold word, dignity. Jessica saw them every day from the window of the drab, cramped apartment she now rented after being forced to sell her LA mansion. Her career wasn't just on hold, it was a crater. Meanwhile, Maya, the Ghost, Evans was ascending. She signed a multi-fight, 7-figure contract with a major promotion. But her first act wasn't to buy a sports car or a mansion. She took the first significant portion of her signing bonus and bought a derelict, boarded-up church in the same blighted Detroit neighborhood where she grew up. She founded The Ghost's Gym, a non-profit foundation dedicated to giving at-risk youth a safe haven and a purpose. It was a place for them to learn boxing, get tutoring, and, most importantly, be seen and respected. Her brother Ray ran the day-to-day operations, his face etched with a permanent, quiet pride. The transformation was absolute. The Apex Performance Lab, once a symbol of exclusion, now proudly sponsored Maya's foundation. Frank Miller had waiting lists for his community outreach program, which was now fully funded by donors inspired by Maya's story. In a desperate attempt at a comeback, Jessica appeared on a low-budget podcast. "I was wrong," she said, her voice hollow. "My prejudice, my ego, it blinded me. Maya Campbell wasn't just a better fighter. She was a better person. I should have respected her from the start." The clip went viral, but not with sympathy. The internet's memory was long, and the consensus was that her apology was about a decade of struggle and a knockout too late. A year after that fateful day, Maya Evans stood in the center of a sold-out arena, the unified world championship belt being strapped around her waist. She had just won, decisively, with a knockout in the second round. In her post-fight interview, with the world watching, she didn't thank her coaches or her family first. She looked directly into the camera, her gaze steady and clear. "I want to thank everyone who ever looked at me and saw nothing," she said, her voice ringing with power and grace. "Everyone who judged me by my clothes, my job, or the color of my skin. You taught me the most important lesson: this world is full of people who will try to put you in a box. They will try to define you, to limit you. Do not let them." She raised her gloved fist. "Your worth is not decided by their labels. It is forged in your soul. It is proven by your character." In her small apartment, Victoria Sterling watched on a flickering television, alone. As the crowd roared for the new champion, she finally understood. Talent is given, but greatness is earned in the furnace of adversity. Maya Evans hadn't just won a fight. She had rewritten the rules, proving that the most powerful force in the world isn't arrogance or privilege, but the unshakable dignity of a quiet soul who refuses to be broken. Have you ever been underestimated? Share your story in the comments below, and let's lift each other up. Please remember to comment with respect, because every person's fight for dignity deserves to be heard. If this story inspired you, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more tales of justice and the incredible power of the human spirit.